Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen, and back with me again, Ted Haycraft.
Tilford Haycraft.
Hugh Tilford Haycraft. Today we are going to be discussing Mike Nichols' audio commentaries, all three of which from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, The Graduate, and Catch-22 are with writer-director Steven Soderbergh. But first off, Ted, what did you watch this week? Anything interesting?
Well, I've wrapped up WandaVision, and then
WandaVision.
Did you enjoy it? The wrap up?
I did.
Okay, that's good.
I feel bad because I've talked to a few friends who have typically no interest in a MCU movie or story, and were loving it because of the sitcom parody aspects to it, and really got into it for there. And I felt bad just like, oh, you had to know it was going to end like a giant CGI video game MCU movie. But yeah, I really liked it. I saw one take online going to a conversation you and I've had multiple times, and not to go down this rabbit hole, but it almost seemed like this is the MCU movie to disprove Marvel or Martin Scorsese's "This isn't cinema, this isn't emotional."
Yeah,
even though it's TV, it's literally not cinema.
Well, is Towering Inferno and Poseidon Adventure cinema?
It played 24 frames a second through a film projector. So I like to think that the whole argument of this was more about high-low argument,
or just personal preference.
Did you read his Fellini essay
yes.
that just came out?
Oh yeah,
content. That I can get behind. Him
yeah,
complaining about content. I get behind that.
I wonder if I could corner him in a corner and then go, Did you really want to use the word cinema? I'm hoping he would say, yeah, that was a mistake.
The whole problem, which
just that one word to me.
Yeah, exactly. We've detailed this multiple times on here before. The problem is him being this kind of in pop culture an arbiter of high-low. And so when he says something isn't cinema, you get mad because like he's the defender of low cinema on top of high low.
Of everything. I mean, he did the intro to Tim Lucas's Mario Bava book. I mean, he shows up everywhere, endorsing all kinds of amazing, wonderful, weird stuff.
I mean, Sam Fuller's so much in his DNA.
Yeah,
like it's obnoxious. But anything else you watched this week?
I saw a couple of films in the theater. I've actually saw quite a few in the theater last week and this week, but this week was Judas and the Black Messiah.
You saw that finally?
Yes, I liked it a lot.
I need to see it again. I was unfortunately watching it when I was distracted, but it is clearly an exceptionally great movie.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, I almost want to watch it now with subtitles because there's a lot of dialogue flying by.
There is a podcast I think on Spotify with hosted by Elvis Mitchell going off the real life details of the behind the scenes of Fred Hampton.
Yeah, kind of an interesting little bit of a speaking of MCO crossover, a little bit of a crossover with the Chicago 7.
Oh God, sure.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a continuity boy. Crossovers and team ups. I'm a child of Roy Thomas and Stan Lee. But anyway, and then the other one I saw was I'm going to butcher this, the Jodie Foster film.
You said you were on Cinema Chat. You already butchered this.
I butchered it.
I just haven't seen this. I don't know.
It's the name of it's a person that's from this country, the Manonurian, something like that.
I just don't know.
Anyway,
the title.
It's the one Jodie Foster got in the Golden Globe for.
First question I had for you: did she deserve her Golden Globe?
I wouldn't vote.
Is this a 2020 Mulligan year?
She's fine. She does a great job. But the actor who plays this detainee in Gitmo is great, and he's wonderful, and he's fun to watch. He's one of those actors you just look to see what he chooses for reaction and talking and gesturing and he's really good, and it's really interesting stuff at the end. And be sure to stay to the end credits because there's a nice little wonderful surprise. I had a happy cry at the very, but I don't know if I really want to spoil that.
When you told me earlier, yeah. I think you shouldn't spoil it. That is one. I think that is one you shouldn't spoil. It did sound.
If you stay, but you gotta stay because there's a lot of it goes on. A lot of interesting stuff goes on in the end credits. Tag wise, that you should stay watch.
My only interesting viewing of the week was I've unlocked a Criterion channel for the Father Goose episode from a few episodes back, and I watched Ghost of Peter Sellers, which when I told you I had watched that, your first comment was
Did you watch the end credits?
because
I helped crowdfund that.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was. I'm glad it was.
But true to typical Ted fashion, have you seen the movie yet?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Oh, you have?
The minute I got it,
Okay.
it was a very long wait
I
for
thought
it.
I had you there.
No, it took a long time, but the minute it came in through the door, I watched it, and wow, it's talk about a director just kind of like.
This is a documentary about the making of a shelved movie called The Ghost in the Noonday Sun. That the reason I heard about this is Edgar Wright has really been pushing this documentary, but it's basically about Peter Sellers being a chaotic personality.
Total pain in the butt, in a major way.
One of my favorite is like the circle of directors who told stories about directing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it opens with that. Earlier in the beginning, there's that press conference where he talks about he's only worked with a few great directors, and I'm thinking, okay, he's got Blake Edwards and Kubrick on the line. He's just shitting on everyone else.
Well, yeah, and again, it's like it's a lot of these giant high profile comedians that are they're just they can be tapped for genius level work, but when you start looking at their over career, there's a lot of crud in them.
Spike Milligan's also big into this. You know one story about Spike Milligan I love that doesn't get enough play? You know what the epitaph on Spike Milligan's grave is?
Oh, I'm gonna know it once you say it because I think I'm pretty much.
Well, it's in like this. I think it's in this Celtic language or something, but it translates to, "I told you I was sick."
That's typical Spike. Because he's a Richard Lester favorite, and the fact that that's the most goofiest thing in the Three Musketeers that Spike shows up in that thing. And that's one I want to ask. I want to talk to Richard Lester about casting him because it's such a out of the weird,
But
casting.
This is not a Richard Lester episode. Okay. We've hit our Richard Lester moratorium. So when I first messaged you about doing this, I said specifically on commentaries, on Mike Nichols commentaries, and it was a messenger response, and you were like, "What is it specifically we're doing about it?" And I had a moment of hesitation where I thought, "Well, shit, are we going to have enough to talk about?" I currently have more notes to talk about right now than I've ever had for any episode. I mean, this is basically a gateway for us to talk about. Both of you and I are taken by one of our finest film writers, Mark Harris's new book, Mike Nichols' Biography.
And please mention the previous two books too, because those are great.
Pictures at a Revolution and Five Came Back. Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned my last episode, a few episodes back, but again, why he's one of our greatest film writers, or he's just such a pleasurable And well, it was funny because when I first saw that he was writing a Mike Nichols book, it was like 5 days before publication, and for some reason, in anticipation of this book, I immediately went to, I should read that book that came out last year, which was an oral history called Life Isn't Everything, which it's solid. It's not, but the Mark Harris book really covers most everything else into it.
Yeah, and the Mark Harris books, I feel all three of them. These are I don't know. Recently, I've had these feelings, and he taps it where I don't want to finish the book. I want the book the pacing and the info and the way he writes and what he brings his insight to it. I just don't want him to finish. I get sad because they're such a fun, great read. And of course, with the 5 pictures, one of the pictures is The Graduate, so kind of a little bit of a warm up for this biography did. But yeah, but what's really strange is that I just out of the blue, just kind of casually, I don't know what. I think it's prompting because I'm working on my library in my house and trying to get it organized. Mm-hmm. I'm coming across a lot of things. Well, I like to watch this, and I've slowly started doing a Mike Nichols run.
This is a great excuse to go through a Mike Nichols rewatch.
And then now with the book coming out, I mean, I'm actually even more deeper to the fact that I'm going to finish off all his films, and the good thing about Nichols' filmography, you can do it in a reasonable amount of time, and not like as opposed to John Ford or something, where it would be.
What was frustrating for me was my rewatch was it started with the big first 3. It was I have actually never seen Catch-22, and I watched in. What's funny is I bought Catch-22, the DVD, the week it came out. It was like March 2001.
Did you buy it because of Soderbergh?
Yeah, I bought it because of the Soderbergh.
I know, everybody.
Because I was going to do it was funny because I literally had the hubris to think I was going to read the book, watch the movie, and then write our old magazine News for You. I was going to write an article on it within like about 6 days. And then 20 years later, I finally got around to the movie, which we were going to talk about that movie because that movie is something. But I watched that. Then I watched The Graduate again, which I mean I've seen periodically throughout the years. And I think I ended up writing the article on The Graduate because when I went to the EPK that on the disc I had, the dialogue was super familiar, and it was a 2001 circa EPK. And then Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which I watched right after seeing Malcolm and Marie because I wanted to watch a black and white house-based couple fight movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and then for this episode, I had to rewatch all three again for the commentaries.
Yeah, that was like I said. I was kind of without knowing it. It's just fortuitous. I was just slowly ramping up into a Nichols film festival over the last couple of years, and then I started speeding up, and then the book came out. I did another thing. You asked me what I watched this week. I watched for the first time. There's a few I hadn't seen. I still haven't seen Nichols. I thought I'd pretty much seen them all, but. And I remember when it was out in the theaters. I remember the ads, and it had a science fiction angle to it.
What planet are you from?
The Day of the Dolphin.
You hadn't seen Day of the Dolphin?
I had never seen Day of the Dolphin.
Because I saw on Letterboxd you saw that, and
I watched it this week myself. I got the Blu-ray in.
I kind of wanted to push it to later, but let's go ahead. Day of the Dolphin. What did you think?
Well, I liked it. I mean,
okay.
But I could see the problem. It kind of just like the ending is just like let's just end it. I mean, and I forgot. I want to go back to the book and see what Harris. Because I know it's a really interesting portion.
You haven's read that part of the book
yet?
yet?
No, I have. Oh, yeah.
But you want to go back.
Here's the thing about we're going to be talking about the commentaries in the Harris book. There's so much richness that I almost can't retain it all. It's almost within 2 days later I'm forgetting it unless I write notes down.
The book really treats him. There was a quote Soderbergh had, not in any of the commentaries, but I think in his book, whenever he was going to be directing his first play, he was getting notes from Mike Nichols, and he's like, that's like talking about basketball to Michael Jordan. Like this book really pushes this thing that, especially when it came to Broadway and New York stage, he's just kind of a go-to of directing, actor directing off stage in New York.
Yeah, and the stage part. See, that's almost like a parallel trajectory you got to taking it in.
The book has all the great stuff of Barefoot in the Park and how revolutionary the opening act was and his staging of it was.
Well, I was reading another chapter today where getting the birdcage going, and it was kind of an interesting kind of a payback because he got fired from a play by. Oh crap! I can't think of the big time producer, and I had to go. So I went back to that section in the book to reread him getting fired from that play because I probably zipped through that portion, and I go, oh, okay, yeah, this guy he had let go of Nichols. He let go of everybody that was working with this same.
I don't remember this part.
Yeah, it was and. So I went back to then read that so I could see. Oh, okay. He'd been sitting on the La Cage aux Folles script. He had been sitting on.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah. No, it was like a musical he got fired off of.
Yeah.
No,
so that's how rich the book is, and so much information.
I do want to finish off the Day of the Dolphin just to tie it.
Oh, yeah.
Day of the Dolphin started as a Polanski project, which seems so weird. The problem with Day of the Dolphin for me has always been in the foundation, like a thriller about training dolphins. It just seems so like every once in a while you get a big artist like does a silly idea and they make it work. This is one of those ones where it just still seems fundamentally silly.
Well, they radically changed the plot what the dolphins were going to do.
I think I did see that. I think the book also makes the point that the poster reveals what happens in the big twist in the second hour.
Yeah, and also the fact that this is an African Embassy Joseph E. Levine movie. Mike had a contract to do 2 movies, so yeah, he was
The
having a
Graduate
problem.
being the first one, yeah.
Yeah, he had a problem. He finally, it was almost like he said, let's just do this one.
Well, Catch-22, which maybe this is a good thing to segue into Catch-22, is strangely a high budget, which Nichols did. Nichols movies involved his quote was always made movies bigger budget, but this was such a big ticket, big ambitious production. They had they said at one point it was like they had the 6th biggest air force in the world in the airfield in Mexico that they shot on. Although the commentary details one of the most fascinating aspects, which I didn't really realize till that commentary viewing is they started shooting with extras filling the air, and they got rid of them, so it's just a bunch of characters isolated around this giant airfield with a bunch of planes.
And when you find that out, you agree with Mike and Soderbergh. You go, yeah,
oh yeah,
this makes this work. I could only imagine if they had the normal extras of a normal airfield, it would just distract and be distracting and noisy and everything. So that was really interesting that they said that. Of course, you got the stories of Watkins.
You're Richard Lester favorite, David Watkins, which Soderbergh at one point says this is one of the most beautiful shot films ever, and you gotta agree with them. He made the point they were only going to they were going to backlight and everything, so they only shot for a few hours.
2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Which I've worked on movies where you mostly backlight everything, and you don't have to shoot for 3 hours a day. Yeah. That is a very long leash you give your cinematographer.
They were letting him, have his day shooting, but Mike says, but I loved him. He was eccentric. You loved the guy, and it was so there.
Well, on the bigger ticket item version of this in the commentary they talk about this being the second really big movie to use front projection after 2001 for the plane scenes, and it shows. They're amazing looking, and then there's those parts when they do like tiny special effects, which are really in camera something. Like there's a plane crash that he describes as Soderbergh. And I mean, you watch it multiple times, and he said they use front projection on the thing that happens before that. I guess we're these are comments. We're not even talking about the movies. We're talking about the commentary. So we're spoiling some of this. But when the plane cuts the guy off,
yes,
they said they used rear projection on it. The first time when I watched it, that was the only time I stopped the movie and watched that frame by frame, and it was like, I don't know how they did that, but it looks so good.
Yeah, of course, you see the frame line. You see the on the high def.
I didn't see that. I had. What did you? I watched the DVD commentary.
Well, even on my DVD, I could see the bat line.
Really?
Yeah. Whereas back when I saw it, I don't know. I have a foggy memory of what I saw and what I didn't see in the theater and TV. But I remember, you would have never saw that when you saw it in the theater or drive-in or.
But you think
TV.
You did see Catch-22 in the theater?
I might have I don't know, maybe.
Do we need to go through it's such an iconic book and that I've never read or only seen until recently, but do we need to go through the plot of Catch-22? It's about a pilot.
Go ahead.
The Catch-22 is about a pilot who keeps getting his mission number pushed up, so he decides he wants to say that to get out of doing those missions. He finds a clause that says if he's crazy, he doesn't have to do that. But if he declares himself crazy, that means he's sane, so that he's going to have to still continue.
Yeah, and any sane person would be crazy, not that he wouldn't want to do that. Fly.
And the structure they have for the movie is that they extend the big montage sequence in the middle of The Graduate, so that every transition of the scenes in Catch-22 connects, even though it's all a fever dream coming from Yossarian, the main pilot played by Alan Arkin. It's nonlinear. It's nonlinear.
Yeah, Buck comes to.
But it's written by Buck Henry.
Yeah, after he had worked
with
him
on The Graduate. Are written
by, back to back. So Buck comes up to Mike and says, why don't we try this as just like our montage sequences? This film is just one giant montage. And it's pretty. It holds its own. But Soderbergh said, in the commentary, Soderbergh goes, that puts you in a trap when you come to post production.
It's very tricky as an editor. When you look at scripts, sometimes when they have very clever transitions, yes, movies and theories are a transition. The problem is transitions always have to feel organic to a certain extent, and so a lot of the great transitions are figured out in post production. And if you tie yourself, the thing you cut off most in movies are beginnings and ends of scenes. Like there's a tendency when you're filming something, you always film someone walking in a room and exiting a room at the end of a scene. And what William Goldman said is the phrase of get in a scene as late as possible and get out as early as possible. I remember listening to a Spielberg interview where he said this late in the game, he's talking about Bridge of Spies, and he's like, even this late in the game, I'm still having to remind myself I don't need to watch someone grab a door handle to open a door to enter the room. But he's been this late into his career. He's a cinematic genius, and he still films this stuff.
Yeah, it's we should say we're off the bat with this Catch-22, since we're starting with that, and Soderbergh. So the fact when this came out, and it was Steven Soderbergh sitting down with Mike Nichols, and Mike copping to errors and mistakes and doubts he had was just revolutionary in terms of audio commentaries. It's still, to this day, I think it's probably the best commentary. Catch-22 is probably the most fun and interesting. There might be some better ones since then. I mean, everybody's doing them now,
Which Soderbergh really kind of.
But first you're a top class filmmaker, and you keep the director prompting, because I've heard there's been other directors' commentaries go, well, there's a Chevy Ford we used, and it's pulling out of the driveway. And you're just like, oh, and so you got it's just I watched it again this week just for this.
Well, the problem with Catch-22 was always that Nichols talked about was MASH ended up. They took so long on Catch-22 and such a big production. MASH ended up beating.
Yeah, I'd be curious if MASH hadn't been out, would have been a hit. I don't know. You think? I don't know. Nichols
keeps talking about on that commentary, and it takes up both books, that he keeps pointing out his flaws just because it was he was on such a high streak with being nominated for Best Director on his first 2 movies for Oscar.
Yeah, I mean,
but no, this movie's great. But I get what he's saying, because it's a big, ambitious book that you could probably There's a new miniseries that came out 2 years ago that George Clooney and Grant Hessoff worked on, and there's just different ways you can do this. And he was the first, and he didn't nail it. So you get that, but it's still a great movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
really interesting.
There's so many different
beautiful movie.
Yeah. Just to watch it on a technical level, you got your the Orson Welles fans have to watch it.
Oh God, we're gonna get.
You got like I said, you got him coming off Buck Henry, and him coming off The Graduate, and he's coming off the Virginia Woolf and The Graduate. There's just so many, and then Art Garfunkel's. I think it's his first part.
It's his first part, yeah, because they had a bond from using the music on The Graduate.
Right. There's just so much, and again, the commentary. I just can't tell you folks, because like recent commentaries, sometimes they're just guys just rattling off the IMDb credits when an actor walks in.
Let me go through a list of Soderbergh's commentaries. His own commentaries are generally pretty illuminating. He's willing to admit thoughts on what doesn't and doesn't work. Our favorite, you and I mutually, is the Limey, with Lim Dobbs, the screenwriter. He likes to do a lot of them with the screenwriter. So he's done Out of Sight with Scott Frank, Traffic with Stephen Gagane, the Sex, Lies, and Videotape one he does with the playwright Neil LaBute. Solaris is a great one, which he does with his producer on that, because it was Lightstorm that produced it, James Cameron. Back to the Writers, Ocean's 11's with Ted Griffith, Ocean's 12 is with George Nolfi, Ocean's 13 with Brian Koppelman and David Levine. The Informant, it's with Scott Burns. Full Frontals with screenwriter Coleman Hughes. And then The Girlfriend Experience is with porn star Sasha Grey. But then we get to all the great commentaries he's done on either classic movies with somebody else or with, what were you going to say, Ted?
No, before you go to the next list, didn't he? I thought he did one Neil LaBute on the Underneath.
That sounds right. Yeah, because it's a Criterion.
Well, it's no. Actually, I think it's
no. It's on the what's the King of the Hill. Underneath on King of the Hill. Underneath is on the King of the Hill disc.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I haven't really seen that or heard that commentary.
I mean, I'm just thinking. I thought Neil LaBute did a couple with him, but anyway. So we'll have to check that out. We'll get back with you guys.
One of my favorites that he did was The Third Man with Tony Gilroy. And what's amazing about that one is it came out, at least I rented it to watch the commentary the week Michael Clayton came out. And there's this great point when they get to the last shot of Third Man, which is a really iconic long last shot. And they talk about the power of last shots. And one of my favorite final shots, long last shots of all time, one of the most emotional, great, my favorite endings to a movie ever is Michael Clayton, which came out that week.
I'll have to go while we watch that now.
They talk about long last shots. He does Point Blank with John Borman. He did Seabiscuit with Gary Ross. One I just found out about that I'm really curious, The Yards with James Gray. He does Day Trippers with Greg Mottola and editor Ann McCabe. Suture with David McGee and David Siegel. Apartment Zero with David Koepp, which I am David Koepp, the big screenwriter. I didn't know that may be one of his early movies. David Koepp is also writing Soderbergh's next movie. Billy Budd with Terrence Stamp. And Clean Shaven with Lodge Kerrigan, who he later hired to direct half the episodes for season 2 of The Girlfriend Experience, which Soderbergh executive produced. But sorry, Soderbergh commentaries, Mike Nichols podcast, clarity, got it.
But no, but when I always people go, oh, commentary. They're I get some people that just say they're a waste of time or they're not.
Who says that? Who says that, Ted?
Just some people I know.
The only problem I've had with commentaries lately is I need to have them. They used to be such a great thing to have on in the background, and now it's just like I need to commit. I'm trying always to commit more to one thing at a time now. So.
I think one of my initial times with the commentary was on Laserdisc, and I remember it was frustrating a little bit because it was Taxi Driver with Scorsese.
Such a great commentary.
And I remember the frustration was it was great. I mean, in one sense it was great, but in another sense it was frustrating because he went off on a tangent on Burn on Harriman at one point, and he just kept on talking about Harriman, it was interesting stuff. But these great scenes were rolling by, and you wanted to hear him you wanted to hear what he had to say about this scene or this scene.
This becomes a problem later. It's not so bad. I didn't remember it being so bad in The Graduate, but in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, like they were talking about one scene and then they would go over a monologue that's a really famous monologue. It was more there, but
yeah, going back to Catch-22, I the one thing, but you said the plane crash is just, I love Soderbergh's reaction. It's just the greatest thing, and I even go, really? I remember watching it. I'm like, and I had to play it back.
It's such a fluid thing. It's a cut. To spoil the commentary, it's a cut. And the thing is, but it's a cut mixture of plane flying behind a mountain and then a dust explosion, and it's literally just a tiny cut.
And if you're not examining that closely, you just let it go by. Oh, the plane crashed in the mountain. And then when you're listening to comedy, you're like, oh my gosh, the magic of movies.
The magic of movies. Well, and because also later in the commentary, Nichols keeps talking about the money they spent, the spectacle. Because one of the great things about Catch-22 is all the money is on screen. It feels like one of those great movies where you see they spent a ton of money on it and you feel it on screen. Nichols said they did this because they didn't know any better, or he said he didn't know any better. And I'm sure people tried to tell him that you could shoot this for a lower budget on a different thing, and he was just like not having it because I don't trust any Hollywood person that's going to make this look generic. But he kept saying he didn't know any better.
Well, I don't. Do you want to hop back and forth because that ties into something he says in the Virginia Woolf commentary? Where
he doesn't know any better.
Yeah, doesn't know any better. He goes. Remember, they go shoot in the college campus. And he said
that. I thought that was a little facetious just because he was saying that literally when you could see on screen. I want to say it was the tree scene between, and you could see their breath, and they shot in the cold, and you could see the location in the background, and it worked. And especially to make a
I'm glad they went on location, but he said he didn't know better because a typical director or studio would have probably just said just do this in LA, stay in LA and do this.
We'll talk about this in a little more later, but another resource I kind of double checked on was the great Sam Osteen book, Cutting to the Chase, which is one of the best books on editing, and he talked in like one of the reasons. So they were 3 weeks over schedule, and they doubled the budget on Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and the reason was because Burton and Taylor, they had a stipulation in their contract saying that they didn't have to film after 6 p.m. and they drink after lunch and then show up at 5 p.m.
And guests were coming and going all the time.
But they said that they couldn't. Yeah, we'll go to that in a second. But they couldn't fire them because Nichols, even though he was very close to being fired, because then Burton and May would walk off the movie. Buck Henry told Soderbergh, which later also Nichols, that comedy shouldn't be backlit. And one of the things, and Nichols then seems to kind of agree because he talks about there's an inimical to comedy and feeling, but he thought it was a good trade just because it's a very distinctive thing. And then Soderbergh says it's one of the best photograph films he's ever seen.
What do you think about, and on that point, Watkin seems to be a proponent of light, not so much the camera. Remember that they said that. What's your thoughts on that?
That's great if you if you don't have a big production that's holding up, so you can only shoot 3 hours a day, and like if you have like a lot of people involved, it's massively expensive. But what does it matter? I had a friend one time say like we were making a movie, and he said 100 years from now, do you think someone's going to look at this movie and say, oh, they came in under budget?
Yeah, Clint Eastwood's mantra.
No, his mantra is to come under budget. And my friend's point was like, it doesn't matter.
No,
one
yeah,
cares
no,
about the
yeah. I
budget.
mean, that's what I just, and then of course, Nichols lived through that whole shift, and where all of a sudden we have box office results recorded, given to us on the weekend. We have budgets displayed for us. I mean, I think about how Charlie Chaplin would do. He would just shut down. He couldn't get any further, and he would just shut down for 2 or 3 days and just think and work, and then start back up again. I mean,
movies can still do that. There's the production of they call it European hours, where it depends on the size of your crew and like how much money you're paying to get a location. And so if you've bought a town and you have the 6th largest air fleet force in the world, it's expensive to shut down for a day or two. But I mean, like if the light shows, it works. I mean, I at the end of the day, it's still a great movie to look at, and I didn't have to pay for it except for my DVD.
Yeah, I wrote down in my notes too. Comedy shouldn't be backlit. The other thing I wrote down: sacrifice clarity for the style.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
So we're on the same wavelength here. And of course, I love how he showed it Kubrick. Remember what he said?
I think you have problem on the narrative or the clarity of the narrative.
Yeah.
Well, his big thing was about what's Netley's horror is the this, again, spoiler, but Yusuf gets stabbed at the beginning of the movie, and it's kind of more revealed at the ending who did it. And I remember my first viewing, I wasn't that unclear on it. I don't know why.
You were not unclear?
I wasn't.
Oh,
and when I watched it again, I was like, how did I realize that? I couldn't pinpoint it.
But Kubrick got an early screening and said that that's pretty good film, but I think you're going to lose your audience. The audience might get lost a little bit, on it.
Well, the other cool quote I got, it's more from later in the commentary, but Nichols says, "Movies don't like good taste." Because he talks about the austerity and the way they shot, and goes more towards the style over the clarity. Because I know one big bugaboo you always had about Nichols is the clear divide that I think is After the Fortune, or mainly Day of the Dolphin or After the Fortune, where in between that and his time away till he comes back on Silkwood, where it was the long takes, and and then when he comes back on Silkwood, he starts.
No, I don't know if it's me.
I thought you and I had this conversation.
I don't know. I don't think we've had that.
Because I thought you and I talked about him leaving for a bit, which the Harris book does.
Yeah, we might have talked about that, but we talked about how he discovered editing. Oh, editing.
But before that, he did these long takes, which is it Virginia Woolf commentary? Soderbergh flat out asks him, is it a theatrical thing? Just because he's used to staging thing and not having to play with time.
And Mike says no.
Which surprised me, because one of the things I found with the limited things I've shot, but more in the stuff I've edited, is that I needed just to play with time. I need time, I need to figure out stuff, time to make performance work. And like staging on set really commits you, which is something he also talked about in the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf commentary, where they knew the text, they committed to the text, and they just had to commit to it after a certain point in their staging of it and the way they filmed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
He also did a quote in here, "Not my kind of movie."
You're kidding. Yeah, I don't remember that part.
He says, "Not my kind of movie." Because he talks about there's no subtext in this movie.
Yeah.
It's all out there in front of you. And
no, I do have that written down. Not my community, because he talks about the fact that normally he's so obsessive with behavior, which is a big part.
He loves to find a central metaphor and a theme, and then work on that, and then hide it.
Well, he's also really interested in the interpersonal and what people don't say. Yeah. That was a big thing.
So, what is this like, and what's next?
Right. I mean, the great things about the Mark Harris book, if anyone's interested in reading it, that I thought was just. Anyone interested in directing in particular, is there are so many great directing actors' stories. One of my favorite techniques was to get into, he talked about in some plays, to get intimacy between his actors. He just had the two leads he needed to get intimacy between lie on a couch together and read lines.
Yeah. Or on the line of the floor and do it.
Yeah, but they had to lie together. They had to lie very close to each other. Or They talk a lot about it. The big reason I wanted to do the commentaries as a reason to talk about the book is because they keep mentioning that he's so great at directing by telling stories. He'll tell a metaphor or
personal stories.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to do with the characters of the story itself.
Oh, one of my favorite is that it's not in either these commentaries but Hank Azaria was having problems on the birdcage, and he was supposed to get really hysterical. And Nichols told this story about Judy Garland getting nervous before every performance, and Judy Garland had a helper that would try to get nervous with her, and then would try to like make it so that the helper would get more nervous. So Judy Garland became preoccupied with calming the helper down, and they did that before every show.
Yeah,
and then he said, "Hey, tell Azaria you're that person."
Yeah, and totally unlocked it, and then from there on, Azaria had it down pat. We should see, I think in the book, and I don't know, I think he says in one of the commentaries maybe too, where he just kind of accidentally found out, this is what I do. This is what I do. I'm a director. It was almost, everything that he had led up to Elaine May, his coupling with Elaine May, their improvisational thing they did on Broadway, and he took acting classes.
Yeah,
and
Strasbourg.
It's amazing. The Compass.
The Compass, later Second City Theater.
That morphed into the Second City. Basically, Nichols and May are kind of ground zero for, Saturday Night Live, National Lampoon, Second City, all these odd modern day comedy almost starts with them.
Well, I think in the Mark Harris book in particular, I was really surprised, but also it's so obvious. Lorne Michaels was a big
big
source. Yeah, and he was also, and Mike Nichols was the unofficial godfather of the early days of Saturday Night Live, and it makes sense. Buck Henry, how many episodes did he host in the first 5 years?
Yeah. Well, a bunch of Mike's people, Candace Bergen, and Buck, and there was a couple other ones that were part of his group. And then of course he ends up, and I ordered it because I don't think I've ever watched it, and I ordered it's a made on demand DVD, but I ordered Gilda. He did the Gilda movie.
I wish we talked a little bit about the Gilda movie on our SNL episode we did about Nothing Lasts Forever. We briefly, none of us had seen, but we had this long debate about what the first Lorne Michaels produced movie was. I want to real briefly go into, just because I want to get it out of the way. There's a part of me that's I've been waiting for a good Mike Nichols book forever, and so
this is it.
Oh, it is. But and to be fair, Life Isn't Everything is still pretty solid too. But there's a part of me that got to the end of this and realized I also want a great Elaine May book.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I really want, and Nichols May is been a fascination for me for a while. And one of the things I read recently about them, which I reread going into this, is on the Blacklist in 2017. There was a script called When in Doubt Seduce by Ali Hagen. She created an ABC show called Notorious, but it's a biopic about Nichols May going from them meeting till about their breakup, the Nichols May breakup. And as biopics go, you know me, I'm hard on them. I hate the rise and fall story. I hate the made up shit typically. It's a pretty solid script. One of the great quotes from there is Nichols' first instinct is cruelty, but he isn't a cruel person. But there are also the script. I think in the Harris book, this might have been in Life Isn't Everything. They have some kind of gossipy. Did they have sex when they first met, or were they ever a couple? The script makes it distinct. It says they did couple when they first came together, but then May decided that they were too much of soulmates in a way that they couldn't be a couple, and that they had to be creative partners for the rest of their lives. But the Harris book, you're nodding that you don't remember this in the Harris book.
No. I'm yes. I'm nodding yes.
Okay. Because
I agree with everything you're saying.
It was they.
Oh yeah. I mean, and
there was a thing where there was a description of, which is also in the script, of when Nichols first went back to May's apartment, she made him hamburgers with cream cheese and ketchup on it, and maybe Nichols lived with them for 4 days. Like, the only really fudging that I saw in the script was it changes the timeline on Nichols' first marriage, and the Pinarello sketch for Nichols May, Parandello. She writes it later as a second act thing, so it can make them like have a fight, and like that was a much earlier sketch of theirs. But she designs it dramatically to like make a big into second act argument.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be mined with the couple and Elaine. I'm just all of a sudden become super fascinating with Elaine May. And
you've watched The American Masters lately? Because I only seen.
Yes, I did. I got a copy.
I saw it years ago, and I
Made
thought
a
you were
bad
pushing
copy.
me to rewatch it.
But actually, I was my first viewing of it, I was a little disappointed. But the second viewing, I enjoyed it more.
Okay.
'Cause
There's a lot of quotes in Life Isn't Everything from the American Masters.
Because I'm putting a lot. I have expectations of what Elaine May. I'm on the camp of saying she's great.
Yeah.
And I'm a child of the '60s, so I grew up. They would show up on a Late Show or a Ed Sullivan or something, variety show. So I sort of knew them just along with everybody else, Dean Martin and all the different acts that Ed Sullivan would have on and everything. I kind of grew, and George
But
Carlin.
they broke up like.
I know, but
but you remember because they talk about it was like 65 they went to Selma. Or
yeah,
60,
right.
Yeah.
And
that was a reunion.
Maybe from I don't know. They were not a stranger to me in a way, but I don't know. Several years ago, I walked into Coconuts, a record store, and somebody had dumped 3 of their CDs,
Mm-hmm.
and they were really cheap. And I snatched them, raced home, and I played them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just so wonderful, and they still hold up. I mean, they are of their time, but yet they're still wonderful to really get into.
I think we're standing next to my CD collection. I think one of the very first things I ever bought off Amazon was a Nichols May CD.
Yeah, and of course then you start discovering all this. So I guess the graduate out commentary, if we jump over to that, is this, they talk about how the great cigarette scene is.
Yeah, it's taken from the teenager sketch.
Yeah.
Last few things I want to finish up the Catch-22. The Fellini sequence that I called it because they shoot so much in Italy.
It's almost started to drag a little bit there.
Oh, it drags. Yeah. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Almost a little stagey too. It didn't seem as organic as I would.
I think that's where they got tied into the book, although I haven't read the book, so can't say. This also follows a thing of like Alex North scores Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but it seemed like Osteen said that Nichols was afraid of Score, which was why they ended up with Simon and Garfunkel so much in The Graduate. But Nichols also talked about his options at what he would have done differently right now to get rid of that austerity, and he said scoring would have been one of the things he might have done now.
Oh, then of course, but there is that one piece of music, and everybody said, "Take it out, take it out."
Oh my! And I mean, it's a gag. It's a funny gag, and Nichols even says maybe we should have gotten rid of it, but
it's 2001.
Thus Speaks Zarathustra.
Yeah, where this a very voluptuous Italian woman is walking toward the camera, and
it's like 2 years after 2001's release. It reminded me of in 1941, the opening of 1941 that opens with the Jaws parody. Yeah. It's like you're too close. It's too close. You can't parody it yet. It really dates it, and it also makes this movie's better than that. Come on.
I wrote this down, and I now I can forget the context, but he I think, and I got it in quotes, von Stroheim folly. He says this is a von Stroheim folly.
I think I remember that part.
And I think that probably is referencing just
the size,
the attention to the minutia and the detail that von Stroheim would just go and that would drag out. Of course, he makes an 8-hour film.
There's a big sequence at the end where they blow up all the sets you've seen this entire time.
Oh my gosh!
And Watkins, I think, has this he winks at him and he's like, I'm only going to light this with the explosions. And they have one line that they had to get, and the line is screwed up, so they had to loop it anyway.
And then there's also the Truffaut theory about circles and corners.
Oh,
did you write that down?
I didn't write that down, but I thought that was an interesting point. Really, do you want to say? No, do you want to say what that?
Well, I think it's like, what was it? It's
it was the scene with Charles Grodin after.
It is scary looking too.
It's like circles are intimate and corners are intimidating. Those aren't the words, but it's something
there. But
corners are harsh.
Yeah.
Well, Charles Grodin's backing into a corner, and that as he's giving one of the most Charles Grodin does not. I have never seen a performance of him being this psychotic. It's great.
And it's funny when I think Soderbergh mentions the Truffaut theory. And Nichols goes, "Yeah, I wish I had known that when I was doing it."
Yeah.
It was a theory that he didn't know. So look that up. I'll have to look that up.
One of the last observations I had, Nichols points out that they didn't have a lot of over-the-shoulder shots, which is a very typical thing. And he thought, in a very Nichols way, it's common. People do that a lot, but Nichols thought that was what was the coldness. But then he started comparing it to 18th century painting. And I was like, there's the erudite New Yorker talking about why a very common cinematic technique thing didn't work or made the movie cold.
But like I said, folks, I can't really recommend how that's just one of the most sublime commentaries that saw him and Nichols on Catch-22.
The movie and it too. I mean, like, the drag part at the end too, but I mean, like,
and the reveal of the fever pitch of the dream it's an amazing reveal. I mean, I think when I first saw it recently,
I don't want to spoil that one.
No, but I was just like, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
pretty
I mean, I think we're two people who haven't read the book talking to probably a bunch of people that have read the book, so. Now we're moving on to the big iconic one, The Graduate.
Yeah, which was supposed to be his first film.
Yeah,
I wrote that down. Drowning in quotes.
Drowning.
Yeah, that I guess there's always this that Dustin Hoffman's character is in the sense
of sense of waters or around him. The big scuba diving sequence.
I wrote down the Place in the Sun informs this film somewhat.
Yeah, the long takes. A Place in the Sun is right now on Amazon Prime, and I'm really wanting to rewatch that again.
Yeah, it's a really I remember when I finally got around to that as an adult. I don't think I saw it as a kid.
He also mentions Soderbergh specifically mentions Persona, and then Nichols talks about Place in the Sun, but also mentions Preston Sturges, and this is all to talk about the long takes. And he says Preston Sturges and talks about the scene in Lady Eve where Barbara Stanwyck seduces Henry Fonda all in one shot with no take or no cut.
Well, there's so much to talk about. We could talk about this forever, but I like one of the funniest things is the Robert Redford story where they're
he's told that the book really does get and both books get this across the print the legend thing of stories of like he's told these stories so many times. Like when Mike Nichols came over on a boat with a no parental supervision from he was born in Berlin and he escaped Nazi Germany. His mother lagged behind, but his dad went over first. So him and his brother's a bigger source in Life Isn't Everything too. I don't remember his brother being such a big part of the Mark Harris book. He had these signs on him, supposedly. This story Nichols told till the day he died that he said, please do not, what was it? Please do not kiss me?
Yeah, do not kiss
me
or
touch
signs.
Me,
I think, or something, yeah.
He tells those stories a lot.
Well, do you want to tell the Redford story?
Sorry. Yeah, tell the Redford story. I cut off your Redford story. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's just that I think it's funny because he'd worked with Barefoot in the Park with Redford.
Redford was his guy. He wanted Redford in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, too.
And the book is a waspish character.
Right.
And I guess that's the brilliance of Buck and Mike and everything, to take that and go in a different direction with it. And so Redford wanted the part. And they were playing pool, apparently, at one point, and they were talking about the part, and
he's saying you need to be. I need you to play a loser, and Redford's like, I can play a loser.
Yeah, Mike, and he goes, well, has a girl ever turned you down? And then Redford goes,
No. He goes, what do you do if you struck out with a girl? And that Redford says, what do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean? It's just like, but it's interesting too, though, because that's kind of that's not fair for Redford in a way, because if you look at Redford's career, he takes that care, he plays off his good looks and deconstructs it a lot of times in his films, right. The ones that he had more control over.
Soderbergh calls this he's saying, I'm not wanting to be hyperbolic, but one of the biggest casting decisions in American cinema history, and kind of right.
I want to say, I even got a bolder statement that I want to throw out, and I threw it out to another film fanatic yesterday, and he goes, well, that's a little bit
little hyperbolic.
It's a little bit too big. And I go, well, yeah, I want to say, and I'm really going off on a limb on this.
Build up.
But the Graduate, I was thinking about this when I watched it this week with a commentary, that it is the sort of the Citizen Kane of the new Hollywood film, of the new Hollywood wave that happened.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I mean, Bonnie and Clyde is a contemporary of it, and of course it's Easy Rider is the flashpoint. Everybody zones.
Isn't this what Pictures of the Revolution is about?
Well, yeah,
because 67 is this charter year.
Bonnie and Clyde and Graduate are the two of the five.
Mm-hmm.
And the other ones are studio stuff.
Dr. Dolittle, In the Heat of the Night,
and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Oh, right.
So, but no, there are lead ups prior to Easy Rider, but everybody, most books and essays and commentaries and blah blah blah, Easy Rider is the turning point, where everybody went crazy and let everybody through the gate, and anybody that had a script, your pizza delivery boy had a script, they let you direct it,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. But there was like lead ups, Mickey One, go back to Arthur Penn with Mickey
Right.
One, and stuff like this. But I'm watching, and here's the thing. One reason I think I thought of this is because I'm watching The Graduate, the commentary, and I actually I got distracted from the commentary
To watch the movie.
because I got caught up in the film. Every time I watch The Graduate, I got caught up, and there's so many things that Nichols and Buck and whoever else worked on it contributed to it. And I'm not saying it's nothing super new, but it kind of rejuvenated, and it plus it influenced faster than Citizen Kane did. You think about Citizen Kane, all these innovations that were put together in one film, but it took
the music in particular.
right, but nothing really quickly happened after Citizen Kane film because the studios were still in power. With The Graduate, everybody, it's like the use of music, the use of editing, and a key element was Greg Toland wants to go to work with Orson because he goes that he'll have fun and do things that that are innovative and different. Robert Surtees, same thing with Mike. He comes to him and says, "Oh yeah," he wanted to work with. And Robert, guy.
Well, it was that, and also like he was every crazy idea Nichols had, he's like really excited about.
Yeah,
it.
right.
Like the close-ups when they're in the apartment or Elaine's apartment, or like take out the walls, shoot them long lens 30 feet back.
Whereas in Virginia Woolf, remember that one guy he fired? He goes
because he wanted to shoot on film and print in black and white.
Well, the one guy goes, "Well, it's just another film."
Well, no, that was the AD that Nichols fired on the first day.
But I mean, but the guy, the fact that he doesn't realize what he's working and doing. Because I said, it's just another film. Whereas Surtees is like, let's go, let's do this.
Right before when I was reading the Osteen book, the cameraman that was fired before Haskell Wexler eventually shot Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf told Osteen later, I was wrong. Yeah.
And then you're gonna kill me on this, but Soderbergh does mention it, but Hard Day's Night is mentioned, and that's another, but that's, to me, Hard Day's Night is super cool and fun to watch, but Lester's taking stuff from commercials and French New Wave, and it's over in England, and it didn't really, kickstart our wave, but The Graduate, I think it's in some ways, I think it could be ground zero more so than Easy Rider is,
I'll give you that. I mean, I think you're onto something because my brain's going to 2001, and I think you're more accurate than I am on this.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to mention, the fact that irony of Soderbergh doing this commentary, because Soderbergh was an executive producer on this movie called Rumor Has It that was written and was supposed to be directed by Ted Griffith, and he had to fire him on the first week, and eventually Rob Reiner directed it. But it stars Kevin Costner, Shirley MacLaine, and Jennifer Aniston, and it's about a daughter finding out that her parents might have been the basis of The Graduate. That their parents had was it Charles Webb is the author of the book of The Graduate?
Yes.
Might have been 21 or 22 at their wedding.
Yeah, Charles Webb is the writer. You're right.
Well, the other, it's funny just because like The Graduate's actually had this weird life as a potential sequel forever, because like Buck Henry talks about it on the DVD EPK, and he's pitching a Graduate sequel in Altman's The Player.
Yeah, it is like I said, it's so, and it's amazing. It's still so alive. It's still just really vibrates, and I like I said, I'm going to dedicate watching and listen to the commentary, and then I'm getting distracted. I had to rewind it to see what they said because I'm watching the sequel, the actual film more so. So
you're gonna kill me, but when I watched The Graduate for the first time before the commentary, I had a take on the movie. I feel like there was parts of it I paid attention to more than I've ever paid attention. I had a problem with the ending, the very last shot. The icon.
Ooh, wow! That's the break it or make it for people.
So what it was that he really follow Mrs. Robinson's real problem with Benjamin as being with Elaine. It's that her marriage is unhappy because she got pregnant in the car, and Benjamin keeps making the jokes about Elaine started in a car, So when she comes, like, they make a big deal about not wanting Elaine to see Benjamin. Like, oh, Mrs. Robinson or Nichols on the commentary talks about Benjamin being just her shame, which sure, I guess that makes sense. But there's also no real reason why, especially because Mr. Robinson really wants Ben to hook up with Elaine. And then at the end, when they hook up with each other, Nichols talks about a big part of the movie is just not wanting to be like your parents, right? But so much of the second half of The Graduate is about trying to make Elaine and Ben's love story be like, the whole movie is about Ben being inactive and not wanting anything and not doing anything. And then when he realizes he wants Elaine, then he goes to Berkeley and starts chasing after her. And like, just, he's very active for the second half of the movie until he gets on the bus. It's not like he got her pregnant. He just wanted, like, he was passionate for a while, and he's got a beautiful girl that he seemed to be in love with. Like, it's not like they're destined to have a loveless marriage after that.
So why did that not work for you?
The empty feeling, the sound of silence playing over it makes it seem like she's going to repeat those mistakes of the parents.
Well, yeah, they will. So,
but they didn't get pregnant. They didn't get forced into a marriage.
Yeah.
They wanted to. They wanted to get with each other.
I don't. That's a true. Now, but you said something. You changed your mind watching it again.
This time. For the first time, because I guess I've never really understood that Benjamin really was really going after Elaine, and I was really taken by the whole movie's about him not wanting anything after school. And then with Elaine, he does want something.
I thought it was daring too that they discussed it whether they would finish the vows or not. So the vows are
right. That's part of the book.
That's not typical Hollywood. Well, in the of course, it was starting to break the code down. Oh, I circled. This is just another my personal take. The characters and the story is so strong, you forget how stylish it is. You could watch it several ways, and there's there's a lot of cool things happening style wise that doesn't really the story and the characters are so strong I didn't really need it, but it's the combination of everything is just wonderful. Again, it goes back down to
I think that part of the reason I've never paid attention to the content as much it's such a stylish, really well shot movie, the montage and Hoffman's performance is I get it. It's the whimper, which he said he got because someone said that when he was dealing with Jack Warner, that was the sound Mike Nichols made.
Oh, going back, I wrote this down too. It is. I can't emphasize enough. It opened an avenue to a new type of leading man.
Yeah,
because the De Niro's, the Pacinos, all that ushered in a whole line that I grew up on. That was my era of coming into my as I became a film fanatic. How that was such a big deal as opposed to the Gary Coopers and the John Waynes and the that kind of characters.
Yeah, you see it. I've always felt that way with Dust Hoffman.
Oh, did you notice there's a little cute little thing I just noticed too. There's a litany of loud screams in this movie.
You mean starting with Elaine's apartment scream? That one's always
which one? Yeah, Elaine screams, but there's somebody screams. Elaine screams. There's two more screams. There's like three big screams, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's no big deal. It doesn't really. I mean, there's no subtext to it, but it's almost like just comedy routines that check it out when you watch it. Pay attention to like three big screams that are almost over the top, almost kind of.
So I got Nichols lamented he was angry at himself for not casting Anne Bancroft in 10 more movies. He talked about watching this again. He felt like a lunatic just because he remembers what it's like being a director where you become someone who just can't be pleased. He admits the thing you mentioned earlier about the teenagers, the Michaels-Nay thing. He admits that on here. Soderbergh points out that the age difference between Anne Bancroft and Dustin Hoffman is smaller than Angela Lansbury and Lawrence Harvey in The Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah,
because they're close in age together. Yeah,
yeah. Well, that's.
Nichols talks a lot about Richard Silbert's decision to put tan lines on Mrs. Robinson, which totally works.
Yeah, the interesting because he's always playing with. We go to Virginia Woolf and you go to this. He's got actresses playing much older versions of themselves. and of course, Dustin was supposed to Mel Brooks and Bancroft's husband wanted him to be in the producers.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that.
And they but Nichols was able to snag him sooner.
Yeah. Fleeing was a bigger influence on Catch-22, but it feels like 8.5 was Nichols' favorite movie at this time. I don't know, like, it feels like an influence on that.
Yeah, well, did they talk about that in one of the commentaries?
They've talked about it on multiple talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry Lewis was shooting in the same studio over from them, and it was one of the first uses the video monitor on set.
Yeah, in fact, over and over and over, you hear again how Mike would love to laugh, and it got to a point in one of the films they had to move him out of the room and put him a blanket over him because he would start laughing.
And they had to get him far away from
Mike would pick up
the set.
And no, it's like it's nothing like you knew you were on the right track if you had Mike chortling or laughing or on it.
After Elaine's scream, whenever everyone thinks that he's raped, a very famous actor ends up getting the line in there, and Nichols fortuitously says he just picked a random guy, but Richard Dreyfuss asks if if Elaine's okay. And
here's where the commentary comes in with you got Soderbergh as a top flight filmmaker talking with another top filmmaker, and why it makes it so vibrant commentary. You get insights of how films are constructed or how directors work or how their observations, reactions are. Soderbergh, when he mentions the Richard Dreyfuss appearance, he says something about, there's people that I've auditioned over the years, all these different, and you go, you didn't hire them for the part, but you knew they were going to make it. You just see it. You go, and sure enough, they do, So that's always good. Norman Fell, the landlord, who shows he's in Catch-22.
He's in Catch-22.
Yeah, and he's Nichols's stock company is interesting as he accumulates over the years. Behind the camera, but in front of the camera is really interesting. And Nichols goes on about that. I don't know if it's in the book or in the commentaries where he says, it takes a while before you get your crew, and then you really feel solid because you've accumulated. I
don't remember that part, but that always seems to be a recurring theme you've always been interested in.
Yeah, that you
other
get,
filmmakers.
And of course, and it's stronger with other directors more so. I mean, gosh, you look at Clint Eastwood's cast and crew, it's
we
really,
always look at Clint Eastwood.
Well, I mean, and Lester, everybody. I mean,
we always look at Lester.
Yeah, so.
I love Soderbergh comment on something that has always been very. I mean, all the books talk about Catherine Ross. Everyone fell in love with her.
Yeah.
But Soderbergh points out finally something. I'm glad someone said it. What about those lashes?
Oh, the lashes. Yeah.
They're the most distinct part visually of her.
And again, here's another things you get from the commentary that we're talking about the commentaries and why you should listen to them. At one point, Nichols says, "Yeah, she should start using her own clothes."
Yeah,
we couldn't, and that's a little
because he was saying that what she wore in the auditions, and that's what everyone fell in love with.
Yeah, and then they kept going. This is not working. This is not right. And it turned out she needed to wear her own clothes, and so that's the little tidbits you get that really are fascinating, and you really glean from these commentaries that he does with Soderbergh.
He talks about this more in the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf thing, but one of his things he talks about with rehearsal is that he asked for a lot of times, and people would give it to him because he came from the theater, which is not common in film. But part of his advice for it was don't perfect, which seems obvious. Don't perfect or to rehearse, but to rehearse intensively, way far out from the film. So you don't rehearse, because Lumet I think would rehearse. Sidney Lumet would rehearse right up to the film. He said rehearse way early, take some time off, and then come back and film.
Hey, this is struck me was we're talking about The Graduate, and we referenced and talked a little bit about Day of the Dolphin. You got the same ending in both films.
I don't. You mentioned Day of the Dolphin's weird ending, but yeah, I don't remember the Day of the
ending. Is just George C. Scott and Trans Van Derveer sitting. They walk off. The Dolphins have taken off, and their members of their crew have run off into the jungle or whatever the island, and George C. Scott and Trans Van Derveer just sit down and just sit.
Huh.
And then that movie ends.
I don't.
And it's like There's no like, well, are they just sitting there? You know, it's almost like Benjamin and Elaine sitting there.
I don't remember if the Harris. Did you read the graduate chapter in the Harris book?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I can't remember if it's in that book or if it's in Life Isn't Everything. But a very strong point. Someone says, Mike Nichols is making a movie where a protagonist builds up and just screams when someone else gets married. Elaine. Was there someone else named Elaine that was big in his life?
There's one that screams at the end.
Oh,
Elaine, but either one of the parents make a scream. Oh, the other scream. I'm sorry. I'm glad I remember this because I brought this up and then you're looking at me like, what's he going? The mother when she goes, I'm going to marry Elaine, and Ruth Wilson just. It's almost like it almost takes you out of the movie.
Okay.
But yeah, but so there's like I thought that's kind of.
Why do you think? What was the point of the scream? Is it like to bring it back to Citizen Kane, the bird in Citizen Kane?
Well, yeah. Oh, the bird, yeah, the cockatoo. But yeah, it's just funny how these just little things I picked up as you watch them over and over again. I was like, oh, there's 3 giant screams in this film.
Now I can't cut that out. Do we want?
Yeah, I knew you were going to cut that out.
You knew. Are we moving on to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Sure. We should have devoted a whole thing to The Graduate. I mean, we could probably.
They're popular movies. We're talking about
commentaries.
You
folks,
nailed one of the. Yeah, no, you nailed it. There's Soderbergh's commentaries are it's this mixture of he's still a curious film fan, he's still a technician who wants to know in detail this stuff, but he's also an established filmmaker who, when he does these commentaries with people, he gets their respect, and so it's just a unique blend. And he's just got such interesting insight into these movies, and he's inquisitive enough and direct enough to ask these filmmakers about them too.
Yeah. So I mean, well, me, any director that would has to devote half a book to Richard Lester is great in my mind. I'm bugging him with the Lester here.
Cutting you off. This is like 2 a.m. and I'm turning off the lights of the bar. I'm cutting you off. This commentary on Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, weirdly, if I hadn't read the books, would have been fascinating. But I found it like so many quotes from the chapter in the Harris book and in I think Life Isn't Everything are taken from this commentary.
Well, yeah, I mean, how can you avoid that? Because there's so much.
I don't know if it's Nichols repeating the same story. It didn't feel like it because they were direct quotes.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an amazing. I mean, there's just all, and the fact that how old was he? Was in his late 20s?
No, he was
mid-20s.
No, he's 30.
He already hit 30.
I think he did 30.
But and of course, how does he get to snag a film with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton? Of course, and you find out in the book or in the commentary where. As Elaine and him were doing their two-person act.
Nichols and May on Broadway.
Right. Next door was Camelot with Richard Burton. So they would go over and
he became friends with Richard Burton.
And then he ends up, lack of a better word, escorting or babysitting Elizabeth Taylor.
Escort. Not that. Or that word has different connotations.
Well, no, I'm using escort not in that way.
Or chaperone.
Chaperone. Over when she was doing Cleopatra, and she'd have all this downtime, and Burton wasn't there, and so Richard called him up, said, "Hey, can you go over and spend some time with Elizabeth?" And so they got close that way.
They mentioned the commentary. It's in the Osteen book. I first heard about this in the Osteen book, but Osteen was hired to be the film, basically kind of an assistant editor. He got his promotion from after you have the 7 years you're supposed to be an assistant editor. It was just his first feature film. But they hired a man named Donnie Harrison, who Billy Wilder had recommended. And he was a man that Billy Wilder worked with, who would then figure out how to shoot shots that would cut together on set. Basically an on-set editor, but then Nichols and him didn't get along and he got fired. But I found it fascinating that like Wilder had someone basically composing I always took it as composing shots, but I guess not. That's a little elaborate, and Wilder concentrated on directors. But Osteen and him seemed to get along, but then Nichols got tired of using him. He quit after a week.
And did
and Osteen got hired also just because he was the first editor who said he could do overlaps, which sure. It must be hard technically, but
Is
at
in
the
the
time.
book of one of the commentaries where Nichols says it also. It's always a good thing to fire somebody right off the bat.
Both, but that was the one where he talked about the AD who I thought it was on here. The AD who said, "Oh, it's just another movie."
Yeah, it is on that one. Yeah,
It's in both, but like
Yeah.
he tells in detail the story on the commentary because
Yeah.
he sounds very justified. Because there's also that scene later where Elizabeth Taylor was afraid of crying, and Nichols kept assuring her, "You'll be fine." And when she finally did the scene and cried, some stagehand fell asleep and was snoring loudly. And Nichols says to show how great Elizabeth Taylor was as a person, the minute he said cut, she jumped to him and said, "Don't fire him."
Yeah. Oh, and of course, I think my favorite thing they said about Elizabeth is he goes, "You shoot the scene, and it didn't really seem to play that well
And you see her on
in
film.
live as you're shooting it. It's like it's not coming up." And then they would watch the dailies, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's there.
And he also talked about how every other actor on set was really just completely amazed at how well she knew filmic acting and to teach and just little things she would do, and they all wanted to learn from her.
And that helps me as a film fan over the years, and at my age, I can't just like, Elizabeth Taylor, she's because of the Richard, I grew up with the tabloids about her, and she'd been around and Lassie and all these films, and I was like, yeah, and then to hear that and then to see that, it's like, oh, okay, no, I need to rethink all this. I need to
She was an actress.
Yeah, I love how something about the bathing in Technicolor and the bath.
Yeah, the bath at Technicolor got her most of her performance.
It should just come out, but they stars get such a bad rap in terms of acting, and then you need to really stop and rethink that.
Not to jump back to the Catch-22 commentary, but there's a scene in Catch-22 where Yossarian comes in and finds his officer on a toilet. And on that commentary, he says Nichols got that story from Elizabeth Taylor, who came in when she was a teenager to Louis B. Mayer on a toilet, giving him a meeting, and she said she hated him for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, and we never did. We kind of totally forgot. We didn't talk anything about Orson being on the set at Catch-22.
Oh my God.
That's a whole. We'll save that for an Orson Welles podcast.
No, let's do it now. Let's do it now. Orson Welles. No, you're right. It was he.
Well, I love the fact that he comes on the set, and a couple of things. He had Peter Bogdanovich is there attached to him with a microphone, and this is when Peter's doing all these interviews with it, and ended up being a big book. And
it's kind of the stuff that's parodied in the beginning of Other Side of the Wind.
Yeah, and then a point he gets his uniform on, and then Orson never takes the uniform off. He wears it the rest of the days he's there, on and off the set in his general uniform.
And what's the guy's name? Austin. What's the actor?
Austin Pendleton.
Austin Pendleton wrote a play about his time with Orson Welles on the set, just because they thought Orson Welles was a bully, and as much time as they spent 6 months shooting Catch-22, they block shot out Orson Welles, and apparently he made everyone miserable. And Nichols says later that it was only years later that he found out that Welles had tried to get the rights to Catch-22 and didn't, and Nichols was glad that he never knew that when they were shooting.
Yeah, and of course, they all, being film people, they were all like deferring to him, but then they found out, Orson was doing, Orson would interrupt shots with line and, and all this stuff.
No, the craziest was he would ask for line readings on other people's shots. When he was shooting a reverse shot, and to be fair, Orson Welles is there shooting with someone else for someone else's shot, but he would ask for a line reading. But then also he'd ask Nichols for line readings, and Nichols details on the commentary the specific one where Yossarian gets his medal naked.
Yeah,
that Nichols is I just need to do this how Buck Henry does this. And it's in the film. That's the way it is. You're a weird. Was it you're a weird guy?
You're a very weird man. Then Austin Pendleton. Remember, he looks at Austin. He goes, Is that how you're going to do it? And Austin goes, yes. And but even funny thing is they still adored and loved the guy. But then John Wayne came down for a visit, And
that's detailed in the Harris book too.
speaking of stars, John Wayne,
On the commentary, Nichols feels so guilty about
Yeah,
this, but
yeah.
he came down. He was just there.
to buy some land, I think purchase some land. I think it was that.
See, I thought there was some like weird hubris of like a star comes down and is like, "You should come meet me at the airport." Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, I just as a common courtesy, it's probably old school L.A. Hollywood thinking, that, hey, it's John Wayne. Anybody come? I mean, that's probably just it. But nobody came to see
I
John.
guess Nichols seems to regret it, and he seems to regret it just because they were mad at what they considered was John Wayne's regressive politics at the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it whatever.
But Orson, yeah, again, Orson's everywhere, and when you're a film fan, it's just it's always amazing to see him come in and go out of this.
But
thing.
one place Orson is not, unless you count some occasional deep focus shots, is in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is my transition back into the commentary.
Okay.
Of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. There was some back to the book being a repository of great directing advice. This also there's a few questions Nichols had that I thought was amazing. Whenever you're going to a scene, the basic questions he always goes to is, to whom is this happening? One thing that appears in the book a lot is, what is this really like? And another one, he especially would ask of George, whose moment is this? And it seems like when you have a scene, especially when you're committed to the material, like those are hard things to figure out sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and he does like, and what's next, and where is it going? He would after he goes, what is this scene about, and then where's it go?
Where does it go? Where does it go? Yeah.
And and I think that's what makes him a very interesting director. I love the fact that, and then he would do the thing. I've heard this before too, but especially I guess maybe I don't know who started that, but he would actually have, wait, stop everybody. Okay, everybody read opposite roles.
Yeah. That was in the book a lot.
And I think
that's a great.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Doing that in rehearsals and have that would inform your performance.
Puts you in the other character's shoes, frees you up. Yeah, makes you empathize with someone who you may be developing too much of an antagonistic line readings with.
We didn't mention people getting fired. He fired Gene Hackman
on The Graduate.
Yeah, and
during rehearsals.
But the funny thing is, he got around to giving Gene some great roles later.
Yeah.
And so
one of the great American actors, American film actors.
In fact, I just read the part in the book where he goes, Mike would actually rattle off all the great actors he fired over the years, and almost reveled in it.
Well, you with Day of the Dolphin. What's fascinating was he in the. Did you get to the part of the book where they were directing George C. Scott? I forget which play it was.
Oh, the play Uncle Vanya.
Was it Uncle Vanya?
Is it?
Okay, I thought it was Neil Simon or something.
What a handful! Because
Neil Simon, or because I thought it was a Neil Simon one because George C. Scott was really happy about finally having a hit.
Yeah, well, maybe that was the other earlier play.
But he did fire him.
Yeah. But oh boy, talk about stories on George C. Scott. You get some really juicy stuff. Not only there's some interviews in the Day of the Dolphin disc, and then the book. You can get some really interesting.
Did you hear a story? It's not from the Nichols book, but I heard, maybe it was from Life Isn't Everything. But I just heard this one of like Scott going off on. He went off on a fellow actor and then came back crying after having gone.
Yeah,
I think
that's in the book.
And there's also the one where he has a party where everybody's on this boat.
On the boat,
and
that's
like,
the Day of the Dolphin. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, well, let's abandon this production.
Yeah, and then it doesn't let anybody go till 4 a.m. in the morning.
The favorite line, Nichols was pretty harsh on Ernest Lehman, who wrote North by Northwest, and he basically just used Edward Albee's script.
Yeah,
they had to cut out.
Albee was very happy with it. He goes, yeah.
I've heard alternating versions of that, but Nichols on the commentary says he thinks Albee was ultimately happy with it and complained about the Alex North score.
Yeah, Albee on the disc. There's an interview with Albee on the disc that says he was because most of the I always hear writers just like, oh, they're just disgusted at what the movie does to their plays, and I think Albee was actually sort of happy with this one.
Lehman would probably be credited with the opening up, them going to the diner, which they talk a lot about, or the bar, which they do talk about in the commentary. But a lot of the stories they always push Lehman's ways are the things of like the dogs having sex, or the kid really having been real and committed suicide, which that was an early draft they all cut out. Like that gets attributed to him. Like Lehman's problem was that like this project was his baby, and everything Nichols got rid of him basically, or just stopped paying attention to him after a certain point. Like there was that famous conversation about the glasses for Richard Burton, and like they eventually came to the Lehman asked Nichols, well, if we get close to shooting and I want the glasses and what do we do then? And Nichols says, well, I'll kill you.
Well, you should mention too that that Nichols saw the play, in its original run, and it just thunderstruck him.
Yeah, he had a great attachment to it.
He just could not. It was a life-changing moment for him, and so that was when it came time that he had a chance to do the film, he had. I
think this is in the book, but he talks about in the commentary that the play had a laugh every 20 seconds, and in the book he had to commit to not making the movie as funny. Does that sound familiar? Maybe taking a little humor out of. Or at least not playing for humor.
Maybe.
His point I was getting, he had to cut his favorite line, which was abstruse in the sense of recondite, which go to your thesaurus. Is anyone listening to it right now?
Such a smart person, him and Elaine. I can't imagine for a year on their Broadway show, they would end the show. Say, throw us out online, throw us out at what style to do it in.
I mean, have you seen good improv?
What's that?
Have you seen good improv?
I'm not sure. I have to think about that. But to do that for a year.
Yeah.
And babies in water and do it in Shakespeare. And it's like
some of that, the style they talked about, like to do it in version of T.S. Eliot or do it Tennessee Williams, although they had the Tennessee Williams parody already there. Yeah, some of that stuff is like, but I mean, like improv is like, there's a cottage industry that they, to your credit, as you mentioned earlier with the SNL stuff, they developed. But I mean, like anyone who goes to UCB right now, listening to this, or Second City or Improv Olympic or something like that, understands like there's definitely successful ways that you could do it for a year, but they were some of the big first ones. Although anyone from the Compass Theater or Second City eventually also would probably, Del Close mentioned in that script, when in doubt seduce, there's some really touching exchanges when they're talking about when they love each other but they're not going to be a couple, where they keep talking about to each other that you're the smartest person I've ever met, and that's like their way of saying I love you to each other. It's really touching in the script.
Do you what do you make of George Segal and Sandy Dennis performances?
Well, that was the part that he originally wanted. George Segal wanted Redford for, and Redford thought it was a small part. There was a line I just read in the Osteen book that, because in the commentary they talk, Soderbergh asks him pretty bluntly, what is it about making characters play drunk? How is the best way? And Nichols just says, ignore it, don't do it. Osteen points out Segal was playing drunk and Burton wasn't playing drunk. And I mean, not literally, but when you see their performances on screen.
Yeah.
Segal, they work. Sandy Dennis, didn't she? I don't think this is mentioned in any of the books or in the commentary. She was pregnant during the shooting and had a miscarriage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What'd you think?
No, I just it's curious to me. I'd never have able to get I've never been able to get a strong attachment, strong observation on George Segal. He's a really interesting guy,
right.
And his career is really interesting.
This is a big interesting role, and he came from some big Broadway shows that Nichols was casting in. But originally Melinda Dillon from Close Encounters and Magnolia played this on stage, and Nichols talked about the fact that like you need a comedian to play this role because there's a big chunk of it that's annoying.
Yeah, and that's the one sad aspect I have, but mainly reading the Harris book is. I mean, and I don't think that's the wrong way, but it's sad because you read about all these great plays with these great actors, and I'm just like, oh, I would want to see that. I want to be there.
Yeah.
I want to take, and I guess we have a good University of Evansville has always had a great reputation, and I should probably be more active watching our USI and U of E plays. But I don't, it's college actors, and nothing.
No. I literally watched a Zoom play Friday night from UE. Like they've been putting plays up on Zoom, but they're solid. But there's something about like the book keeps talking about these supposedly legendary performances. There's this great exchange in that script where I don't know if this is a real Mike Nichols story, but when he was a kid, he saved up because he wanted to see Olivier play. I think it was Hamlet or it was Olivier playing Shakespeare on stage. And Nichols paid a ton of money, and when he got there, that was the day Olivier's day off, and they had the understudy.
Oh man! Speaking of Olivier, I love there's in the commentary again. The reason that you listen to these commentaries with Soderbergh and the director Nichols talking. Mike talks about that crying scene, Richard Burton crying scene, and he goes, and Richard goes, I can't do it that way because Larry already did it that way, and then you went, Larry. Oh, Lawrence did. So he had to find another way to cry because he didn't want to repeat the way that Olivia had cried.
There's anybody appreciating. I think this has been well gone over, but people living in New York don't appreciate what they have. And I mean, to be fair, it's expensive, and like season subscriber holders or the fact that Broadway's too expensive that the average person can't see, much less it plays to the whole tourist part of New York that people have to come in to see it. But these great performances, they're a miss. But there was also, I wanted to point out, Nichols has this great description of things that are good on stage that you can't do in a movie, and he talks about when a play's bad, the last actor that shows up in that play is a depressing moment because he feels like this play is not going to show him anything else after that point once you know what the performances are and the last actor. But in a movie, you can cut to anything and anything can happen. Being in New York, I just on a personal take, I get a chance to spend almost, I think it was close to a week in New York in 1980. It was right before Lennon was shot. I was there. Thanksgiving was Thanksgiving week, and I could have stayed with more movies. A comic book convention was going on at the time, and bookstores, and just gone crazy on that alone. My strengths and what I like, but I went out of my way to see 3 stage performances. What'd you see?
I saw Chorus Line was strong at the time. Saw Chorus Line. I don't know.
Do you remember? Was anybody in
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think. I think all the biggies. If whoever started Chorus Line was not there, I'd be curious. I guess I need to check who was in that one. Maybe there was
Chorus Line.
Elephant Man with David Bowie.
I can't remember if you've told me about this before.
Yeah, so Elephant Man with David Bowie.
Oh man,
I thought I was going to say I saw a third one. Maybe I didn't. I did go to a retro theater and saw Monsieur Verdot on the big screen for the first time, and then I also saw
that's a movie. That's not a play test.
I know, and the Marriage of Maria Braun. I took it a foreign film, a Fassbinder film. So I made a definite plan to take in every aspect of New York and not just stay with movies or stay with whatever. So, and I was very happy that I thought I saw a third play, but maybe I didn't. I can't. But yeah, Chorus Line and the Elephant Man.
Nichols has a great quote towards the end of this commentary about what Elaine May taught him about acting, and it's Elaine May taught him that an actor needs to be inside and outside a person at the same time. That like you need to be showing a person's flaws, but also being them at the same time to show empathy about them too. Herbert Ross choreographed the dance. Herbert Ross, director of Pennies from Heaven, among so many great movies.
Did he? Am I wrong? Footloose? Is that Herbert?
Yeah. Sunshine Boys. Steel Magnolias, I think.
That sounds spot right.
But he came from Broadway and he was a choreographer. But he choreographed the dance.
Yeah, there's like little interesting people that came out. Like Schumacher came out and worked his way up into being a director. Interesting chores.
We're planning on doing a Bob Fosse episode coming up soon.
Fosse.
But you worked it around to Nichols. The back to Osteen stuff. one of the ways I guess Osteen ingratiated himself to Nichols was that I did this technique for editors that I personally hate, but I'll do it. It's basically have a the job of a dialogue editor. You make an normal editor doing it. And what you do is you take syllables and vowels from other line readings in the movie and you put them together to make up completely new lines or new readings of words. And Richard Burton apparently mispronounced some Latin throughout the movie, so Steen would do that, would put together that. One place I worked at, we used to call them Frankenbiting because it was taking the term soundbiting and Frankenstein and combining the two.
Another thing we should talk about, we haven't mentioned Mr. Wexler.
We haven't talked about Haskell Wexler.
Who's always, he's a handful.
They made a big deal about this being his first movie, but he did America for Elia Kazan, right?
I think so. Yeah, sounds right. But he comes across every time I see him in an interview, or I don't think I've listened to the commentary. But by the way, there's a secondary commentary.
Yeah, with him.
With
him.
him.
I haven't listened to that.
But he's always. It seems like he'd be a handful to work with, and he's
I mean. Nichols had the problem just because he took a long time, I think, and he didn't dictate stuff to Osteen on how to cut because of it.
And you get to hear things like, "Oh, that's interesting." He would tie. He had to do a scene where Sandy's dancing around and around, circling around and around. So in order to do it right, you put a tied rope to her.
And
would circle around, which was nice to see that. Oh, okay. But I thought the really interesting one was Burton. He said that. Nichols said that Burton had a bad habit of forgetting lines, and if he had a long monologue to do, it was hard to get that.
I wanted to go over the shot. We're going to talk about the shot, okay?
So they're outside. George Siegel and him are talking, and it involves a long monologue with Richard Burton. He got through it. He got a take, we got it. And Soderbergh, Nichols is very happy about it.
And they go to Dailies.
And he had the wrong, what do you call it?
It's 8 stops off, which is significant. That is significant.
It was like a nuclear holocaust was going off behind him or something.
When he's describing this shot's described in the book, and when I thought about it, I was like, man, that's... Because what's going to happen is you're going to see the black and white movie in particular, you're just going to see very oversaturated blacks or something like that on it. But when you watch the shot, Soderbergh can't even tell.
Yeah, well, it was funny. I think even Soderbergh was commenting how good that scene looked. I think he said. He's like, oh, and then Nichols had to go. Well, it was actually.
Yeah.
And that's another.
Because Nichols uses the phrase, "It's like high noon." We shot in high noon.
And so it's like the plane explosion in Catch-22 commentary. It's one of those magic moments in the commentary that you don't get a lot of commentaries. You get these magic nuggets that you just go, oh wow, can you believe that they pulled that off?
One other little tiny thing. I think. Okay, so. Catch-22, I'm sure, was a commentary that was recorded around 2000, 2001, and it came out on a 2001 disc. Then Graduate Commentary is dated as 2007 on the Criterion disc. The last line of the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf one says, he talks in terms of 2007 because he mentioned Shooting Charlie Wilson's War, or he references Shooting Charlie Wilson's War. He says 2 times for 2 films, 20 to go, meaning they've probably just got Catch-22 and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I think they probably got Graduate and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf at the same time for this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Could you imagine, again, like for the Catch-22, it would be great to hear the commentary on The Fortune and Day of the Dolphin. Even more so than the successful ones.
I mentioned this to you when we were talking about doing this episode. In the Harris book, whenever it came time for Nichols to have a career retrospective, he said everything except, was it The Fortune, Wolf, and Day of the Dolphin, I think. And he got talked into putting The Fortune. And then, whoever made him watch The Fortune, at least they appreciated it. I'm not sure Nichols actually appreciated it. That also was available on Amazon Prime to watch, and another one I'm meaning to revisit. But the point I was going to make about the black and white cinematography on this commentary, and the date it being 2007, you get to hear Mike Nichols talk about, I watched Sin City on the plane.
Oh yeah, that was really crazy to hear that. So the name drop Sin City of all films, and of course the reason I don't see Mike Nichols going out of his way to see that movie, but it makes sense. He's seen it on a plane. He's stuck there, so that's
That sounds about right. I guess maybe we should start to wind down. One of my favorite lines in this, Nichols brings this up, but it's also what's fascinating to me is also a Lim Dobbs line. Lim Dobbs, who wrote The Limey and had a great commentary with Soderbergh where they fought with each other. They both agree. It's not the specific line, but the basic idea is that every movie you work on, every story you see, should be the most important moment in these characters' lives. And Nichols makes the point of saying that the character changes is important. I found it a fascinating line. I've never 100% agreed with it. I think that for starters, it just invalidates movies with good sequels. But just on a practical level, like people's lives are filled with stories. Our lives are filled with momentous events. Like a whole life doesn't have just peak in one moment. I mean, I get it. Like it's a way of like focusing on stakes for your stories, and especially for playing it makes sense to do it. But I'm just not sure I agree with it.
Did the Easy Riders Raging Bull book? Does Nichols get much play in that?
I believe so. It's been a long time.
Where do you? So, in summing up, and as we're closing down here, this is another thing I was grappling with. Where does Mike Nichols fit into this? Because we talk about the movie brats. You talk about the Scorsese and De Palma, and Milius and Coppola, and all these guys, Schrader, and where does he fit into this? Because he even Altman and Kubrick get kind of shoved in there somewhat, but Mike seems to be a little bit different trajectory in a way.
Part of the reason I'm surprised that it wasn't you and I that had the conversation about the long takes is I think another aspect of the conversation is that he was visual and he was less visual and he learned to cut. Yeah. And he had budgets that he no longer commanded, and I mean,
when I think about Silkwood, I think about Charlie Wilson's War, I think about Primary Colors. I feel like I'm getting a lot of good story and character. I don't think about style.
I agree.
And whereas when I watch Graduate, you get both a little bit. So that's kind of interesting. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
I think there's an argument that it's more direct storytelling.
Yeah.
It's less like tap dancing. But I mean, the problem is he peaks. The early two successes then go into movies. What's funny, we were talking about this before we started recording. Catch-22 works for me, and it seems like it works for you, but it was treated as a failure. Where does he go from there?
Yeah.
Carnal Knowledge, a movie everyone kind of around the board loves.
And a good friend, Jules Pfeiffer, not only, when Jules Pfeiffer saw Nichols and May, he's like, they're doing what I do in my Village Voice comic strip.
And he became a big fan and friend.
Big fan, because you think about it, that's all the main thing of Jules Pfeiffer's, the main thing he's known for are people talking about the social mores in his strip, which is what Elaine and Mike were tapping into with their improv.
Yeah.
So they were a match made in heaven. So that Carnal Knowledge came together.
Well, my point was he still made one good movie, at least indisputably good movie that everyone got on board with before he.
Yeah, and I they, the Dolphin and the Fortunate, are not write-offs, in any way, as opposed to some other stuff that you would want.
And the book details little things like Goodbye Girl, which was originally supposed to have De Niro in it, and he was directing.
Bogart Never Sleeps Here or something.
Yeah. Neil
the whole thing got. In fact, that's a good story too. Harris, where he goes, he's 3 days. There's several days in the filming. They're actually filming the dang thing, and then somebody says, "Well, just shut it down." And Mike goes, "You can do that."
Yeah. Has an endless amount of relief from it, and then ends up not directing a movie for and Harris makes a big point about Silkwood is at top of my Netflix queue right now, but it's a movie that you can't find on any streaming services or anywhere just because of music rights, and I forget which studio ended up putting it.
It's a nice Blu-ray out on it.
Is there?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I've never seen it. I really want to see it. And he said it was one of Nichols' best movies. I really want to see it.
Another thing, this struck me the day as I was getting ready to come over here to record. I was thinking about old man movies. Quentin Tarantino, Quentin says, I don't want to be one of those guys that has gone past his due date and not make, I'm going to do he's going to do 2 more and that's it, or
one more.
And then, you get you look at Howard Hawks and John Ford and Hitchcock and some of these guys, Billy Wilder, Buddy is his last film.
Right.
You look at these guys, you're just like, they maybe lost something, or it's an age or what. But then
you want to call bullshit when it comes to Mike Nichols.
Well, there's there's Lumet, was another one that was making good films all the way to his death.
Arguably Altman.
And Clint, look at what Clint's doing. I know it's debatable, but it's still.
Oh, you just took your point and just took it down.
No. Lately, I don't know. Hopefully, he's got another one done. He's still. But anyway, Charlie Wilson's War, and he
Aaron Sorkin script.
And I think he probably would have done some more if he lived longer.
You know what's fascinating is my problem with Charlie Wilson's War, because I was a big fan of the original version of the script that had leaked, and I'd read it before. So this was that period in the late aughts where I was reading every script that had leaked, especially Sorkin ones. I found out that my problem with it, Sorkin and Nichols were on the good side of the script, and Playtone and Tom Hanks were on the version we saw that bummed me out. There's this amazing monologue at the end of the script where it ties up Charlie Wilson's actions, basically is planting the seeds for 9/11. Because it's he's giving money to the Taliban, and it culminates in this amazing line where Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is yelling at Charlie Wilson, and he said, "We just taught them how to fuck with a superpower." It's such an amazing ending, and it's a great argument speech. And then in the movie, it just kind of peters out. I think there's a shot. It jumps to 2001. He kind of looks at it, and Tom Hanks' argument, which is detailed in the Harris book, was just look, I don't think we tested both versions. I don't think we did enough to say that Charlie Wilson birthed 9/11. But
Yeah.
Sure, maybe, especially if you want to respect the book and you want to respect the real person. But on the page, and it so much was more impactful and worked better.
And we come full circle. We start talking about Jodie Foster film with a detainee in Gitmo, right? And they show scenes of the Charlie Wilson era.
I to your point, less Charlie Wilson's War, but the great thing about, as you mentioned earlier, the Mark Harris book is about all stage work that Mike Nichols did.
Too.
And Mike Nichols, Betrayal was his last one, which he was barely there for. He did a Harold Pinto revival, but the one before that was he did this great version of Death of a Salesman with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Andrew Garfield, where they reused or recreated the original Elia Kazan set from the original version.
Ooh, yeah.
And it was his last Tony win. And to be fair, Nichols, half of the work he did was backing off and letting Philip Seymour Hoffman figure out some stuff, just because Nichols' health was really kicking in. I assume you haven't read the end of the book.
I haven't got the. Yeah, I'm.
Spoiler.
Well, no, but you're exposing me. I was telling Shane earlier, I would have this book done already, but I'm slowed down because I'm enjoying it so much. I don't want it to finish.
You're so much smarter than me in that regard, Ted. But he went out at the he had a bad cough at the end, and so he had to miss rehearsals just because he was disturbing coughs. And in the sadder part they talk about at the end of the book is because even on the commentary he talks about Martin McDonough play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He talks about just seeing a Martin McDonough play on Broadway. I forget, he mentioned some other play he had just seen. They talk about how he was constantly excited by something new. I mean,
young. He loved the youth. Yeah.
Towards the end of his life, one of the last things he did was, I think in some of the last weeks of his life, was he went to an early test version of Hamilton when Lin-Manuel Miranda invited him to see just an earlier version of it before to get it off the ground. He was constantly excited by the young, and all the way until
open to it, yeah, and not shut down. And not to curtail this point we're making right now, but I don't wouldn't you have loved? I wonder if it's recorded. Do you know, to see the Elaine May Mike Nichols version of Virginia Woolf, them performing?
Oh man, actually, you're making an interesting point. I forgot to break up. I know we're winding down, but there's a lot.
So much.
Merciful, we got this.
This could be a multi-part.
One of the things that isn't in the Harris book, but is in Life Isn't Everything, is Nichols as an actor.
Yeah.
played a part in this play called Designated Mourner, written by Wallace Shawn.
And apparently it's available on DVD.
Yeah, no, it's directed by David Hare. Life Isn't Everything tells more about what happened, where Nichols didn't want that version going out, but it did anyway. Meryl Streep and Christopher Walken flew to London to see this. He was only going to do it in London. They wanted to bring it to Broadway, but he wouldn't allow it. But Meryl Streep said it was one of the finest pieces of acting she's ever seen a man do.
That's high praise,
isn't it?
Very high praise.
Yeah.
So but I would just because I'm just rabid about Nichols and May, and more so May. So I would love to see that performance of them two together as George and Martha.
They have the pictures in the book, and that's
I don't know. There's always a possibility that it's recorded, but it's sitting somewhere on a shelf.
He talks about on the Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf commentary. He talks about the trees scene, the monologue there. Like that was a monologue he liked to do when he played the part.
Yeah.
We could go on, and we have, but you've already mentioned the virtues of the commentaries. Like
again, I've when the commentary started up on Laserdisc era, and then they continued obviously now. And now it's crazy. Kino Lorber, they got like 2-3 guys, Howard Berger, Steve Mitchell. They almost had a crew ready to go. I'm upset now because they're almost slapping a commentary, no matter if it's worthy of a commentary or not. And they put out you're gonna kill me for this. They put a ton of literature lessers out with nothing, and there's some people that can really do great commentaries on Lester.
Mm-hmm.
So these commentaries are really worth checking out. The right people. I think Tarantino was praising some people commentaries recently on a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Former guest Tim Lucas,
and Tim brings some interesting insights and stuff. So, but the Soderbergh thing, the Soderberghs are just a masterclass. They're masterclasses in a way, in their own way. I know there's that whole series. And in the book, I think Shane and I can't praise the book enough.
Yeah.
I can't. What's this next book? I forgot. Does it mention what?
I didn't know there was a mention of the next book. I didn't know there was.
I think he's working on something, but I don't think he would reveal it. I think.
Okay.
So,
that's promising. I go back to the original reason we wanted to do this episode was that these book kept pointing out that Nichols. I know one story I wanted to tell.
Sure.
Lane May, have you ever seen his Kennedy Center? I think it is. Not his Kennedy Center, but no, his AFI Lifetime Achievement Dinner. Have you seen that?
I probably did back when it first aired.
There's this.
Her Lane's talk. Yeah.
So
the
reason we wanted to do this was I think these commentaries are our best resource of hearing Mike Nichols tell stories because he directed by telling stories. And Elaine May gives this. In the print legend version, Mike Nichols says his cousin was Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And Elaine May tells this hilarious story of being in Mike Nichols' apartment and coming across a Guggenheim Bible and opening up a letter from Albert Einstein to. What was his nickname for young feet? Young Igor.
Igor, yeah.
Yeah, that was Elaine May's nickname for Mike Nichols, young Igor. He said, letter to young Igor, and Albert Einstein was like, I can't figure out how to give across E = mc squared or energy = mass, or my mathematics and physics knowledge not being able to recreate this. And he talks about Mike Nichols, little Igor, eating one pea at a time and saying, well, just imagine you look at this little girl on a train looking out longingly. And then there's a boy on a train out the window looking back at her equally longingly. And they see each other. And they don't realize that both trains are in motion at the same time. And Elaine May loses the house when she says, Albert Einstein wrote, that's when I realized I should stick with physics because I can't do directing. I guess that's going to be it for this episode, Ted.
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening for this long episode. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Adios.